Mom said the family trip to Hawaii was over budget, and my ticket was the first to go. She feigned regret, but I heard my sister giggling in the background. They assumed leaving me in freezing Denver meant I would just cry. Their mistake was forgetting who actually pays the platinum card bill. By 7 the next morning, while they squeezed into economy, I posted one photo from a private jet with vintage Krug. That was just the beginning. My name is Annalise Carver, and I am 32 years old. On my tax returns, I am listed as a consultant, but my actual title at Aurelius Solutions is Crisis Director. My job is to exist in the shadows of the ultra-wealthy and sanitize their mistakes. When a senator wakes up next to a dead overdose victim in a Las Vegas penthouse, I am the one who makes the body disappear from the news cycle. When a tech mogul accidentally tweets a racial slur that could tank his stock by 40%, I am the one who engineers the apology tour and the charitable donation strategy. I operate with surgical precision, removing emotion from the equation to focus purely on damage control and leverage. I am very good at my job. I have spent 10 years learning that every human relationship is transactional, yet, like a fool. I assumed my own family was the exception to the rule. I was the wallet. That was my role in the Carver-Miller household. My stepfather, Gary, was a nice enough man who had never quite figured out how to make his paycheck stretch past the second week of the month. My mother, Linda, was a woman who believed she deserved a life of leisure that she had neither the skills nor the finances to acquire. And then there was Bella, my 24-year-old half-sister. Bella listed her occupation as content creator, which effectively meant she took photos of lattes and complained about the lighting in restaurants she could not afford. For the past 3 months, I had been curating the perfect anniversary trip for my mother and Gary. It was their 25th anniversary, a silver jubilee. I wanted it to be spectacular. I treated this vacation with the same meticulous attention to detail that I applied to my corporate clients. I built a spreadsheet with 17 tabs. I cross-referenced weather patterns in Hawaii with jellyfish migration charts. I secured reservations at restaurants that had waiting lists 6 months long by calling in favors from chefs who owed me for burying their health code violations. The destination was the Paradise Palms Resort on the island of Maui. It was not the most exclusive resort on the island. That title belonged to the Sapphire Cove next door, but it was high-end, family-friendly, and exorbitantly expensive. I had booked 2 oceanfront suites, one for Mom and Gary, and one for Bella and me to share. I had even arranged for a private catamaran sunset cruise and a luau that did not serve the dry, rubbery pork found at the tourist traps. Bella had been insufferable during the planning phase. She sent me links to spa packages that cost $1,200 per person. She demanded we upgrade to a cabana by the pool because regular lounge chairs were, in her words, tragic for her aesthetic. She wanted vegan champagne waiting in the room. Despite the fact that she ate pepperoni pizza 3 times a week, I said yes to everything. I absorbed the cost. I told myself it was worth it to see my mother happy. I told myself that money was just a tool to facilitate love. 2 days before our scheduled departure, I was in my office in downtown Denver. Reviewing the final itinerary, I had just finished prepaying for the flower arrangements orchids, my mother's favorite, when my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I answered on the first ring, expecting her to be in a panic about packing or sunscreen. "Annalise, honey," she said. Her voice had a strange, breathless quality to it. It was the tone she used when she was trying to sell me on a lie. "We have a bit of a situation." "What is wrong?" I asked, my fingers hovering over my keyboard, ready to fix a flight delay or a lost reservation. "Is everyone okay?" "Oh, everyone is fine," she said quickly. "It is just, well, Gary and I were looking at the budget for the trip." I frowned. "What budget? I paid for everything. Mom, the flights, the hotel, the activities. You just need money for souvenirs." I know, she sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation. "But you know how expensive things are on the islands. Food, tips, incidentals. Gary is worried, and then we saw that the airline prices for your tickets specifically surged. It is some sort of error, I am sure, but it is just too much." I paused. My ticket was already purchased. I had bought it 2 months ago. Economy Plus, just like theirs, because I did not want to make them feel bad by flying first class while they sat in the back. Mom, I said slowly, I already have my ticket. It is paid for. Well, that is the thing, she stammered. Gary thought well. We thought that since you are so busy with work, and since it is going to be so crowded, maybe it is best if we downsize the group, just for this trip, to save money on the extras. You know how tight things are for us. I sat in my ergonomic office chair, staring at the skyline of Denver covered in gray winter clouds. So, you are uninviting me to the trip I planned and paid for. It is not uninviting, honey. That is such a harsh word, she said. We just think it is better if you sit this one out. Maybe you can join us for the next big one. Besides, Bella and Kyle are so excited, and there really is not enough room in the rental car for 5 people comfortably. My blood ran cold. Kyle, Bella's boyfriend of 4 months, an unemployed personal trainer who thought wearing a backwards baseball cap inside constituted a personality. Kyle is going, I asked. My voice remained steady. I thought this was a family trip. I thought we were cutting costs. Well, Kyle paid for his own ticket, Mom lied. I could hear the deception in the frequency of her voice. And Bella needs him there for support. She gets anxious traveling. I see, I said. So, let me clarify. You, Gary, Bella, and Kyle are going to Hawaii, and I am staying in Denver to save money. It is just for the best. Annalise, she said, her voice gaining confidence now that she thought she had won. You work so hard. You probably need a rest at home. Just relax. We will send you pictures. I heard a sound in the background. It was a high-pitched, stifled giggle. It was Bella. She was listening. She was enjoying this. Okay, I said. Okay. Mom sounded surprised. She had expected a fight. She had expected me to beg. Okay, I repeated. If that is what you want, enjoy the trip. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. The relief in her voice was palpable. We will miss you. I love you. Goodbye, Mother, I said, and disconnected the call. I placed my phone on the mahogany desk. I did not scream. I did not throw my stapler at the window. I closed my eyes for exactly 10 seconds and inhaled deeply. Then, I opened my eyes and became the crisis director. The first rule of my job is, do not trust the initial report. Verify everything. I opened my laptop and pulled up the application for the security system I had installed in my mother's house 3 years ago. I paid the monthly subscription for the cloud storage. So I had administrative access. I scrolled back the timeline to 10 minutes ago. The video feed was crisp, 4K resolution. I saw my mother standing in her kitchen, holding the phone to her ear. Bella was sitting at the island counter, painting her nails a bright coral color. Kyle was leaning against the refrigerator, eating an apple. I turned up the volume. She actually bought it, Mom said, putting the phone down and laughing. God, she is so gullible sometimes for a smart girl. Did she cry? Bella asked, blowing on her wet nails. Please tell me she cried. No, she went all quiet. You know how she gets. The ice queen, Mom said. She opened the fridge and took out a bottle of Chardonnay. But seriously, Bella, this was risky. If she cancels the cards, we are screwed. She will not cancel, Bella said dismissively. She is desperate for you to like her. She will probably send us $500 for dinner just to apologize for not coming. Besides, I need this. Mom, Kyle is going to propose at sunset on Thursday, and I cannot have Annalise there hovering around in her ugly pantsuits, critiquing everything. This is my moment. I need the spotlight. If she is there, she will make it all about how she paid for the champagne. Kyle chomped on his apple. Yeah, babe. Plus, I do not want her asking me about my job prospects while I'm trying to get into the zone. Exactly, Bella said. This is our engagement trip. Mom and Gary are just the chaperones. Annalise is merely the bank. And the bank does not need to come on vacation. I watched them laugh. I watched my mother pour wine for herself and Bella. I watched them toast to their cleverness. To Hawaii, Bella cheered, and to getting rid of the dead weight. I paused the video. I saved the clip. I downloaded it to my secure server. Dead weight. I looked at the reflection of my face in the dark computer screen. I did not look like a victim. I looked like a predator who had just spotted a wounded gazelle. They thought the trip was a prepaid package. They thought that because I had forwarded them the confirmation emails, the transaction was closed. They were amateurs. They did not understand how the world of high-end hospitality worked. They did not understand that a booking made on an American Express Centurion card, my card was a living, breathing contract that could be altered at the whim of the cardholder. I pulled up the spreadsheet, the hotel rooms, the flight upgrades I had secretly processed yesterday to surprise them, the private car transfer from the airport, the dinner reservations, the spa treatments, all of it was linked to my profile. I could have canceled it all right then. I could have hit the cancel booking button and watched them arrive at the airport with invalid tickets. I could have watched them get turned away at the check-in counter. It would have been satisfying, but it would have been too fast. It would have been a quick sting, easily healed. They would have just driven back home, blamed me, and played the victim. They would have told everyone I was a vindictive monster who ruined their anniversary. No. In my line of work, we do not just neutralize the threat. We dismantle the narrative. I needed them to go. I needed them to land on that island. I needed them to taste the humidity and see the palm trees before the ground crumbled beneath their feet. I picked up my office phone and dialed my executive assistant. Sarah. Sarah, I said, my voice completely devoid of tremors. Get me the dossier on the Sterling account, the one with the property dispute in Maui. The resort merger, Sarah asked. I thought that was on hold until next quarter. It just became active, I said. The client is at the Sapphire Cove right now. I need to be there in person to handle a sensitive negotiation. It is an emergency. It was a lie, but only a partial one. The client was indeed there, and he had been begging for a face-to-face meeting for months. I had just decided to grant him his wish. Book me a flight, I commanded. Not commercial. I do not want to deal with TSA lines today. Call our contact at NetJets. I want a Citation or a Gulfstream, whatever is available to leave tomorrow morning, and book me a suite at the Sapphire Cove. The presidential suite, if it is open. The Sapphire Cove. Sarah paused. Isn't that right next door to where your family is staying? Yes, I said. That is a happy coincidence, and Sarah ensure my itinerary is completely separate from my personal accounts. Bill everything to the firm as business development expenses, but keep my personal credit card active. I will be needing it for remote management. Understood. Ms. Carver, anything else? Yes. Contact the concierge at the Sapphire Cove. Tell them I have specific dietary requirements. I want a bottle of Krug Vintage 1995 waiting in the room, chilled to exactly 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Consider it done. I hung up. I turned back to my computer screen. I opened the reservation portal for the Paradise Palms, where my family would be staying. I did not cancel their rooms. That would be too kind. Instead, I clicked on the Modify Reservation tab. Originally, I had booked them the Royal Ali Oceanfront Suites. These rooms came with butler service, access to the private lounge, and complimentary breakfast. I changed the room type. I scrolled all the way down to the bottom of the list. Standard room, limited view. The description noted that these rooms faced the parking structure and the industrial air conditioning units. They were 300 square feet smaller. No butler, no lounge access, no breakfast included. I saved the changes. The system refunded the difference, about $8,000, back to my card. Then I went to the flight reservations. They were flying United. I had used my miles and status to upgrade them to Economy Plus with priority boarding and 2 free checked bags each. I removed my frequent flyer number from their reservation. Instantly, their status reverted to Basic Economy. The lowest tier, the tier that did not allow for carry-on bags in the overhead bin, The tier that assigned seats randomly at the gate. The tier that ensured they would be sitting in middle seats, likely separated from each other, near the lavatories. I felt a cold, sharp satisfaction settle in my chest. They wanted to save money. I was helping them save money. They wanted independence. I was giving them independence. I looked at the calendar. They flew out tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. I would be taking off from the private airfield at 10. I would arrive on the island before them. Thanks to the speed of the jet and the lack of layovers, I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window of my office. The city below looked like a circuit board, full of energy and connections. I had spent my whole life trying to be the connection that kept my family powered on. I had let them drain me because I thought that was what family did. But the woman in the video, the woman laughing about dead weight, she was not family. She was a liability. And as the crisis director, I knew exactly how to handle liabilities. "Okay, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "You want a budget trip? Let us see how you survive when the budget is zero." I picked up my purse, a limited edition Birkin that cost more than Bella's entire wardrobe, and walked out of the office. I had packing to do. I needed to find my most intimidating sunglasses and a swimsuit that looked like it was made of liquid gold. If I was going to be the villain in their story, I was going to be the best-dressed villain in the history of the Hawaiian Islands. The game had not just changed. The board had been flipped. And I was the only one holding the dice. The morning sun over Denver usually heralded a crisp, beautiful start to the day. But at Denver International Airport's main terminal, it simply illuminated the chaos of the unwashed masses. It was 7 in the morning, the peak of the rush hour, and the air inside the terminal was thick with the scent of stale coffee, anxiety, and too many bodies pressed into too little space. I was not there. Of course, I was observing the timeline of events in my mind, visualizing the catastrophe I had orchestrated with the precision of a master conductor. At this exact moment, my mother, Gary, Bella, and Kyle were standing in line at the United Airlines check-in counter. I knew this because I had received a notification on my phone that Bella had attempted to tag me in an Instagram story. The caption read, "Hawaii-bound family vacay mode activated." The photo showed them smiling, oblivious to the fact that they were standing in the wrong lane. They had marched up to the premier access carpet, assuming my status extended to them even in my absence. I could picture the gate agent, a woman who had likely been yelled at 3 times already that morning, looking at their boarding passes with a weary expression. "I am sorry," she would say. "These are basic economy tickets. You are in Group 5. You need to use the self-service kiosks in the main lobby." The walk of shame back to the kiosks would have been the first blow, but the knockout punch was waiting at the baggage drop. When I booked their tickets originally, I had included checked bags, but when I stripped the reservation of my frequent flyer status yesterday, those perks evaporated. Basic economy rules were draconian. No carry-on bags allowed in the overhead bin, no checked bags included. Bella did not travel light. She traveled with the entitlement of a duchess and the budget of a pauper. She likely had 2 massive suitcases filled with outfits for content creation, plus a carry-on for her makeup. Kyle would have his golf clubs, assuming he could play at a course that charged $300 a round. Mom and Gary would have shared a large trunk. The kiosk would have flashed red. Baggage fees due. $480. I imagined the color draining from Gary's face. He was a man who panicked if gas went up by 10 cents. $480 was an astronomical sum for a logistical error. "Just use the card Annalise gave you," Bella would snap. Tapping her acrylic nails on the screen, Mom would pull out the supplementary American Express Gold card I had given her years ago for medical emergencies or car breakdowns. She would swipe it, declined. Not because I had frozen it yet, I was saving that for later, but because I had lowered the daily transaction limit to $50 immediately after our phone call yesterday. "It is not working," Mom would whisper, panic rising in her throat. "Call her," Bella would hiss. "Call Annalisa. She probably forgot to pay the bill or something ridiculous." My phone vibrated on the table next to me. A picture of Bella appeared on the screen. Her face contorted in a duck-face pout. I let it buzz, once, twice, 3 times. Then I flipped the phone face down. I was not standing in a line surrounded by screaming toddlers. I was sitting in the private lounge of the Signature Flight Support Terminal, located on the far side of the airfield. The room smelled of fresh lilies and expensive leather. The only sound was the gentle clinking of a silver spoon against a china saucer as I stirred my Earl Grey tea. "Ms. Carver," the concierge approached me, his voice a respectful murmur. "The pilot is ready for you whenever you are. We have loaded your luggage, and the flight attendant has uncorked the Pinot Noir you requested." "Thank you, James," I said, standing up and smoothing the skirt of my linen suit. "I am ready." There were no security lines here, no taking off shoes, no removing laptops. I walked out onto the tarmac where the Gulfstream G650 waited, its white fuselage gleaming under the morning sun. It was a beautiful machine, capable of flying near the speed of sound. While my family was currently being forced to open their suitcases on the dirty airport floor to rearrange their underwear in a desperate attempt to consolidate weight, I was stepping onto plush carpet. The flight attendant, a woman named Elena, whom I had flown with before, took my coat. "Welcome back, Ms. Carver," she said. "We have a flight time of 6 hours and 15 minutes. Can I get you a hot towel?" "Please," I said, settling into the cream-colored leather armchair. As the jet taxied to the runway, overtaking a long line of commercial airliners waiting for takeoff, I felt a vibration of pure power. We took off steeply, soaring above the turbulence that plagued the lower altitudes where the commercial flights trundled along. Once we reached 45,000 feet, I opened my laptop. It was time to work. I logged into the American Express portal. The failed transaction at the airport was there, flagged in red, but as I scrolled through the pending charges from the last 24 hours, my eyes narrowed. There was a charge from last night. Pending Paradise Palms Resort. Upgrade charge. $1,200. They had done it before they even left Denver. Probably right after Mom called to uninvite me. They had called the hotel. They had used the supplementary card number which Mom had written down in her notebook to upgrade their standard view room back to a partial ocean view. They thought they were so clever. They thought that if they just charged it, I would simply pay it without noticing, or that I would be too embarrassed to dispute it. They did not understand that to me. A spreadsheet was a sacred text. You do not alter the text without the author's permission. "Elena," I called out. "Yes, Ms. Carver." "Top off my glass, please. I have some banking to do." I navigated to the card management screen. I did not just want to decline the charge. I wanted to scorch the earth. I selected the supplementary card linked to my mother's name. Status active. I clicked Report Lost/Stolen. A warning box popped up. This will immediately deactivate the current card and decline all future transactions. "Are you sure?" "I am very sure," I whispered. I clicked Confirm. Then I went a step further. I accessed the joint checking account I shared with my mother, a relic from when my father died, and I needed to help her manage the estate. I had not used it in years, but I kept it funded with a cushion of $5,000 for their household repairs. I initiated a transfer. Transfer amount: $4,980. Destination: my personal savings. I left them exactly $20. Enough for a few coffees, but certainly not enough for a cab ride in Maui, while I was dismantling their financial safety net at Mach 0.9. My family was enduring the indignity of commercial air travel. Based on the flight schedules, they were currently crammed into a Boeing 737. Because they had no status and had checked in late due to the baggage fiasco, they would have been assigned whatever seats were left. I closed my eyes and pictured it. Gary was likely squeezed into a middle seat between two strangers who refused to give up the armrests. Mom was probably rows away, near the back, where the engine noise was deafening and the line for the lavatory leaned against her shoulder, and Bella, who needed legroom for her aesthetic, was undoubtedly folded into a window seat with no view. Unable to recline because the person behind her had jammed a knee into the seat back, they would be hungry. United Basic Economy did not provide free meals, only tiny packets of pretzels. And since they had no credit cards that worked, Bella's own card was maxed out. And Kyle was notoriously stingy. They would be staring at the menu with the longing of starving orphans. I, on the other hand, was currently being served a seared ahi tuna salad with a sesame ginger vinaigrette, followed by a filet mignon cooked to a perfect medium rare. The flight passed in a blur of productivity and indulgence by the time the pilot announced our descent into Kahului. I had reorganized my entire investment portfolio and drafted 3 crisis management protocols for a client in Tokyo. We landed on the private strip, far away from the chaotic main terminal where the tourist herds arrived. A black SUV was waiting on the tarmac to drive me 50 yards to where a private helicopter sat, its rotors already spinning lazily. The Sapphire Cove arranged the transfer. "Carver," the driver said as he loaded my singular, elegant Louis Vuitton trunk into the helicopter. "Excellent," I said. The helicopter ride was a 15-minute scenic tour over the lush green valleys and waterfalls of Maui. I looked down and saw the winding highway that connected the airport to the resort area. It was bumper-to-bumper traffic. Somewhere in that line of red taillights was a shuttle bus. It would be a shared shuttle, the kind that stopped at 6 different hotels before reaching yours. The air conditioning would be struggling against the humidity. A baby would be crying in the back row. My family would be sweating, exhausted, and turning on each other. "Why did you pack so many shoes?" Bella, Gary would be grumbling. "That baggage fee cost us our dinner budget." "Shut up, Gary," Bella would snap. "If you made more money, we wouldn't have to worry about $50. It was $400, Mom would cry, and my card is not working. I am going to have a heart attack. I smiled at the thought as the helicopter banked left, revealing the stunning coastline of Wailea. We touched down on the private helipad of the Sapphire Cove. The general manager, a man named Henri, whom I had known for years, was waiting with a lei made of fresh, fragrant tuberose. "Welcome home, Ms. Carver," Henri said, bowing slightly. "We have prepared the presidential villa for you, and per your request, the Krug is on ice." "Thank you. Henri, you never disappoint." The villa was a sanctuary, 3,000 square feet of indoor-outdoor living space, a private infinity pool that seemed to spill into the Pacific Ocean, and a view that cost $5,000 a night, but I did not have time to swim yet. I had a message to send. I walked to the edge of the lanai. The sun was beginning its descent, casting a golden hour glow that no filter could replicate. Below me, to the left, I could see the Paradise Palms Resort. It looked crowded. The pool was a soup of inflatable rafts and screaming children. I could see the building where the standard rooms were located, a concrete block facing the parking lot. That was where my family would be checking in within the hour. I went back inside and poured a glass of the Krug 1995. The bubbles danced in the crystal flute. I took the glass out to the lounge chair. I sat down and extended my legs, crossing them at the ankles. My skin looked bronzed and glowing against the white cushion. The ocean stretched out infinitely in the background, framing the expensive champagne and the unmistakable luxury of my surroundings. I snapped the photo. It was perfect. It screamed wealth. But more importantly, it screamed access. It was a photo that said, "I am here, and you can never reach me." I opened Instagram. I selected the photo. I did not tag the location as the Sapphire Cove. I tagged it as Wailea, Maui, generally. Knowing Bella would see the proximity, my thumbs hovered over the caption box. I needed something that would cut through their exhaustion and entitlement like a scalpel. I typed, "Work hard." So you never have to hear, "Tickets were too expensive." Aloha. I hit post. I took a sip of the champagne. It tasted like victory. The nightmare in paradise had officially begun, and they had not even unpacked their bags yet. The digital impact of my photograph was immediate and violent. In my line of work, we talk about engagement metrics and viral velocity, but watching it happen to my own family was a different breed of satisfaction. Within 14 minutes of posting the photo of my legs and the vintage Krug, my phone began to pulse with a relentless rhythm. It was not just likes, it was an interrogation. My notification center was a cascading waterfall of names. Aunt Susan, who lived for gossip and judged everyone's potato salad, commented immediately, "I thought Linda said you were staying home to work. Looks like heaven." My cousin Mark, who had always suspected my mother was a financial drain on me, simply posted 3 fire emojis and the words, "Living your best life," but these were just the spectators. The real target audience was currently sitting in a swaying shuttle bus, stuck in traffic on the Hana Highway. I could visualize the scene with perfect clarity. The shuttle would be packed. The air conditioning would be struggling against the humidity and the collective body heat of 20 exhausted tourists. Bella would be sitting by the window, trying to find a signal to update her followers on her arrival in paradise. She would refresh her feed, expecting to see her own content at the top. Instead, she would see me. She would see the golden skin, the condensation on the crystal flute, the unmistakable azure of the ocean that looked nothing like the view from a shuttle bus window. And then she would read the caption, "Work hard so you never have to hear, tickets were too expensive." It was a direct quote. It was a knife twist. My phone rang. The caller ID displayed Mom. I let it ring 3 times. In negotiation. Silence is a weapon. It forces the other party to stew in their own anxiety. On the 4th ring, I slid my finger across the screen and brought the phone to my ear. I did not say hello. I simply breathed, listening. "Annalise." My mother's voice was a shrill shriek, distorted by the poor reception of the moving vehicle. "What is the meaning of this? Where are you?" "I am in Hawaii, Mother," I replied. My voice was smooth, calm, the complete antithesis of her panic. "I am currently watching the sunset. It is quite spectacular." "You are here," she sputtered. "But you said you were staying home. We told you the budget was tight. We told you we could not afford for you to come." "No," I corrected her. "You told me my ticket was too expensive. You said the family budget could not accommodate me. You never said I was banned from the island of Maui. Since I paid for my own ticket, a private charter. Actually, I'm not impacting your budget at all. You should be happy. I took your advice and became self-sufficient." "You are humiliating us." Bella's voice cut in. She must have snatched the phone from our mother. "I have people messaging me asking why I am on a bus while you are drinking champagne. You are ruining my brand. Annalise, you are making it look like we are poor." "If the shoe fits, Bella," I said, taking a sip of my wine. "Perhaps if you had saved the money you spent on that fake Prada bag, you could have afforded a better transfer." "You selfish bitch," Bella screamed. I could hear other passengers on the bus murmuring in the background. "We are family. You are supposed to be helping us, not flexing on us. Where are you? Are you at the Paradise Palms?" "I am nearby," I said vaguely. "But do not worry. I will not intrude on your vacation. I know how much you wanted the spotlight. Bella, it is all yours." "Wait, Annalise?" It was Mom again. Her tone shifted from anger to a desperate, wheedling frequency. "Honey, listen. Since you are here, maybe we can meet up for dinner. Gary is really hungry. And we are all just so tired. If you are staying at a nice place, maybe we could come over just for a drink." It was pathetic. She had just screamed at me. And in the same breath, she was looking for a handout. "I am afraid that is not possible," I said. "My resort is very exclusive. They have a strict guest policy. Besides, I have a lot of work to do. Crisis management never sleeps. Annalise, please. Enjoy the hotel. Mom, I hear the garden views are interesting this time of year." I hung up. I placed the phone face down on the table. My pulse had not even quickened. I checked the time. It was 4 in the afternoon. The shuttle bus would be pulling into the Paradise Palms in exactly 12 minutes. I stood up and walked to the edge of my terrace. From my vantage point at the Sapphire Cove, I had a direct line of sight to the driveway of the neighboring resort. I picked up a pair of high-powered binoculars that I had found in the villa's study. I adjusted the focus. Sure enough, 12 minutes later, the white shuttle bus groaned to a halt in front of the Paradise Palms. It was a nice hotel. Objectively speaking, it had a large open-air lobby and a koi pond, but compared to where I was standing, it was a Motel 6. I watched through the lenses as my family disembarked. They looked ragged. Gary was sweating through his polo shirt. Mom was fanning herself with a brochure. Bella was stomping her feet, looking at her phone, likely checking to see if I had replied to her nasty text messages. Kyle dragged the luggage, looking like a man who was reconsidering his life choices. They walked into the lobby. I could not hear them, of course, but I knew the script. I had written it. They would approach the front desk. They would smile, expecting the VIP treatment I usually secured for them. They would ask for the Royal Ali Suites. I lowered the binoculars and picked up my iPad. I logged into the hotel's guest network, a simple hack I had mastered years ago, and accessed the security camera feed for the front desk. It was not strictly legal, but neither was stealing your daughter's money to fund a lazy boyfriend's vacation. The feed was grainy, but the audio was clear enough. "Welcome to Paradise Palms," the receptionist said. He was a young man with a bright floral shirt and a name tag that read, Kevin. Checking in. "Yes, the Carver party," Mom said, leaning on the counter. "2 suites, oceanfront, and we were told there would be a welcome basket." Kevin typed on his keyboard. He frowned. He typed again. "Ah, I see the reservation here," Kevin said. "Ms. Linda Carver and party. However, I am not seeing any suites." "What do you mean?" Bella snapped, pushing her sunglasses up onto her head. "My sister booked it, Annalise Carver. She always books the suites." "Yes, I see the history here," Kevin said politely, "but it appears the primary card holder that would be Ms. Annalise Carver modified the reservation yesterday." "Modified?" Gary asked, wiping his forehead. "Modified how?" "The booking was changed to 2 standard rooms," Kevin explained. "Rate code Economy Saver. These rooms are located in the Hibiscus Wing." "The Hibiscus Wing?" Mom asked. "Is that near the beach?" Kevin hesitated. He looked uncomfortable. "Well, the Hibiscus Wing is our most accessible building. It faces the rear of the property. The view is primarily of the staff parking area and the generator facility." "The parking lot!" Bella shrieked. Her voice cracked, echoing through the cavernous lobby. "You are joking. We are supposed to be oceanfront. I need the ocean for my morning content." "I am sorry, miss," Kevin said, his smile tightening. "But this is what was booked and paid for. The previous reservation was canceled and refunded to the original card." "That bitch," Bella hissed. "She canceled it." "She did not cancel it," Mom said, her face turning a blotchy red. "She downgraded us. She did this on purpose." "Is there any way to upgrade back?" Kyle asked, stepping forward. "We can just pay the difference." "Certainly," Kevin said, looking relieved. "We do have 2 ocean view suites available. The difference would be $650 per night, per room, for a 7-night stay. The total upgrade cost would be $9,100, plus tax." Silence descended on the group. $9,000. They did not have $9,000. They barely had $900. "We cannot do that," Gary mumbled, looking at his feet. "Then I'm afraid I can only offer you the keys to the standard rooms," Kevin said. He placed 4 plastic key cards on the counter. They looked cheap and flimsy. "Breakfast is not included with this rate, but there is a lovely cafe down the street that serves pastries." Bella stared at the keys, as if they were contaminated with anthrax. Then, she did the only thing she knew how to do when reality failed to meet her expectations. She made a scene. She pulled out her phone. She opened TikTok. She hit live. I watched on my iPad as the notification popped up, Bella_Life is live, scammed in Hawaii. I tapped on the notification. The screen filled with Bella's face, close up, tears welling in her eyes, tears that she could summon on command. "Guys, you are not going to believe this," she sobbed into the camera. "We just got to Hawaii, to this supposed 5-star resort, Paradise Palms, and they completely scammed us. We booked oceanfront suites months ago, and we get here, and they are trying to shove us into a room overlooking a dumpster. She spun the camera around, shoving it into Kevin's face. The poor boy looked terrified. "Say hi to my 50,000 followers," Bella screamed at him. "Tell them why you are stealing our money. Tell them why you ruined my engagement trip." "Miss, please, you cannot film me," Kevin stammered, holding up a hand. "I can do whatever I want," Bella yelled. "This is consumer fraud. My sister paid for this, and you guys probably pocketed the money. I am going to use this place. Do not stay here. Guys, #scam, #nightmare. The viewer count on her live stream was ticking up. 200 people, 300. Comments were flying in. User 77. "OMG, that is awful. Travel, babe. Sue them. Real talk. Wait, didn't your sister post a pic from a private jet? Why isn't she helping?" I watched the chaos unfold from two angles simultaneously. The grainy security footage of Bella screaming at a minimum wage worker, and the high-definition livestream where she played the victim. It was a masterclass in self-destruction. She was attacking the hotel, but she was inadvertently revealing the cracks in her own story. She was admitting she did not pay for it. She was admitting she was helpless without my intervention. I took another sip of my cocktail. It was a Mai Tai now, made with fresh pineapple juice and 20-year-old rum. Down in the lobby, the hotel manager had arrived. He was a large man in a suit. He was not smiling. "Miss," the manager said firmly, his voice audible on the security feed, "you need to stop filming immediately, or we will have to ask you to leave the property." "Kick me out," Bella laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "Go ahead. I will burn this place to the ground online." "Bella, stop it," Gary hissed, grabbing her arm. "We have nowhere else to go. We have no money for another hotel." That snippet of audio, "We have no money," was caught clearly on the live stream before Bella jerked her arm away. The comments shifted instantly. "Rich Kid Z. Wait, they're broke. Maui local. Don't come to the islands if you can't afford it. Sherlock homeboy. The sister is at Sapphire Cove next door. I recognize the view in her pic. This family is messy, lol." I smiled. The internet was doing my work for me. The crowd was turning. "Fine," Bella screamed, ending the live stream abruptly. She snatched the key cards off the counter. "Where's the damn room?" "Down the hall. Past the laundry facilities. Take the elevator to the second floor, and it is the last door on the left," Kevin said, his voice icy. I watched them trudge away. They looked smaller than they had when they walked in. Their shoulders were slumped. The luggage wheels clattered loudly on the tile floor, a sound that echoed like a funeral march. I closed the security feed. I closed the TikTok app. I stood up and walked to the railing of my balcony. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in violent shades of purple and bruised orange. The air was cooling down, but the heat of the conflict was just beginning to rise. They were in their room now, room 204. I knew the floor plan. It was directly above the loading dock. At 5 in the morning, the delivery trucks would arrive with their reverse beepers blaring. Beep, beep, beep. They would not sleep well tonight. I turned back to the luxury of my villa. My personal chef was arriving in 30 minutes to prepare a seafood feast. I needed to shower and change into something silk. As I walked inside, I allowed myself a single, quiet laugh. It was not a joyful laugh. It was the sound of a structural engineer listening to the first rivet pop on a bridge that was destined to collapse. "Welcome to paradise," I whispered. "I hope you packed earplugs." Hunger is a powerful motivator, but shame is a far more potent fuel. After the humiliation at the front desk and the relegation to the standard room overlooking the dumpster, my family did not hunker down and eat the protein bars they had packed in their carry-on bags. No, that would have been logical. That would have been admitting defeat. Instead, they decided to double down. I knew their psychology better than I knew the back of my own hand. To Bella and my mother, a setback was just a scene that needed to be reshot with better lighting. They needed to project an image of unbothered opulence to counter the narrative that was starting to leak out on social media. They needed a stage, and in Wailea, the most expensive stage was a restaurant called Spago. It was 8 in the evening. The air was thick with the scent of plumeria and charcoal grills. From my vantage point on the terrace of the Sapphire Cove, I could see the lights of the neighboring resorts twinkling like fallen stars. I did not need to be at Spago to know exactly what was happening. I had the alert set up on my phone. Attempted transaction Spago Maui. Amount $842.50. They had gone all out. I closed my eyes and pictured the table. They would be seated on the patio, likely having argued with the hostess for a table with a view. Despite not having a reservation, they would have ordered the Wagyu beef, the lobster tails, and bottles of wine they could not pronounce. Bella would have spent 20 minutes arranging the silverware and the breadbasket for a photo, ensuring the ambient lighting hit her cheekbones just right. Living our best life, the caption would read. Unbothered. They were eating my money, or at least, they thought they were. The notification on my screen was not a receipt. It was a security alert. Status declined. Reason card. Reported lost/stolen. The game of financial musical chairs had just stopped, and they were the ones left standing without a seat. Inside the restaurant, the atmosphere would have shifted instantly. The waiter, a professional who had likely served billionaires and celebrities, would have returned to the table with a discreet, tight-lipped expression. He would not have said it loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear, but the silence at the table would have been deafening. "I am sorry, ma'am," he would say, placing the heavy black card holder back in front of my mother. The card was declined. The terminal says, "Pickup card," which usually means it has been reported stolen. Stolen. My mother's laugh would be high and brittle, a sound of pure nervous energy. "That is ridiculous. It is my daughter's card. I have permission to use it. Try it again." "I have tried it twice. Ma'am, the issuer has blocked the transaction." I could see Gary checking his pockets, patting down his beige cargo shorts as if a wad of cash would magically materialize. Gary never carried cash. He relied on the philosophy that Linda handles the finances, which was a polite way of saying he relied on me. "Bella, use your card," Mom would hiss. Her smile fixed and rigid for the benefit of the other diners. Bella would freeze. Her credit card, a starter card with a $2,000 limit, had been maxed out 3 weeks ago on a content creation trip to Coachella. She had been counting on the engagement ring from Kyle to boost her engagement metrics so she could get brand deals to pay it off. "I left my wallet in the room," Bella would lie. "You have Apple Pay," Kyle would point out, unhelpfully. "It is not connecting," Bella would snap. "Just pay for it." Kyle, "We will Venmo you back as soon as we get to the room. Mom just needs to call the bank." Kyle, the wild card, the personal trainer who lived in a shared apartment and drove a 10-year-old Honda. He had come on this trip thinking it was a free ride. He had saved up for the ring, yes, but his daily operating budget was likely non-existent. $800, Kyle would ask, his voice rising an octave. "Babe, that is half my rent." "Kyle, please," Mom would whisper, her eyes darting around the restaurant. "People are staring. Just handle it. Annalise will reimburse you. You know she is good for it. It is just a glitch." A glitch. That was what they called my orchestrated demolition of their safety net. I imagined Kyle's hand trembling slightly as he pulled out his debit card. It was a Wells Fargo debit card, the plastic worn down at the edges. He handed it to the waiter. "Thank you, sir," the waiter would say, taking the card with a look of pity. The transaction would go through. Kyle's savings account would be gutted. The resentment would be instant. I knew that look on a man's face. It was the look of a man realizing that the glamorous woman he was dating came with a price tag he could not afford. As they walked out of the restaurant, the tension would be palpable. The humid Hawaiian air would feel suffocating. They would not be holding hands. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was Mom again. I let it ring until the final second before voicemail picked up. Then I answered. "Hello?" My voice was groggy, as if I had been woken from a deep sleep, though I was fully dressed in a silk evening gown, preparing to leave for the gala. "Annalise," Mom shouted. She was panic-stricken. "The card? The Amex." "It was declined. The waiter said it was reported stolen. We almost went to jail." "Calm down. Mother," I said, suppressing a yawn. "What are you talking about? What card?" "The gold card. The one you gave me. We were at dinner, and it didn't work." "Oh," I said, my tone shifting to one of mild realization. "That card. Yes, I froze that yesterday." You what?" "I froze it, and I reported it as compromised." "Why would you do that?" she shrieked. "We are in Hawaii. We need it." "Well," I said, injecting a note of logical condescension into my voice, "you told me explicitly that the family trip was over budget. You told me that we were not going together. So, when I started seeing charges popping up in Maui flight upgrades, hotel charges, restaurant bills, I assumed my card details had been stolen. I assumed someone had skimmed the numbers. After all, you said you were trying to save money, so I knew you wouldn't be spending thousands of dollars at five-star resorts." There was a silence on the other end of the line. It was the silence of a trap snapping shut. I had used her own lie against her. If she admitted she was spending the money, she admitted she was lying about the budget. If she denied it, she had no right to be angry. "But you knew we were going," she stammered. "You knew." "I knew you were going on a budget trip," I corrected. "Standard rooms? Economy flights? I did not think you would be dining at Spago." The fraud algorithm agreed with me. It flagged the spending as inconsistent with user profile. So, to protect my credit score, I locked it down. "Unlock it," Bella yelled from the background. "Unlock it right now. Annalisa Kyle had to pay with his rent money. He is freaking out." "I cannot unlock it," I lied smoothly. "Once a card is reported stolen, the number is burned. They have to mail a new physical card. It will be sent to my billing address in Denver. It should arrive in 7 to 10 business days." "7 days?" Mom gasped. "We are here for 7 days, Annalisa. We have no money. Gary has $20 in his wallet. I have nothing. Bella is broke." "What about the cash I sent you for Christmas?" I asked, knowing full well she had spent it on Botox. "That is gone, Annalise. You have to help us. Western Union Venmo something." "I am afraid my banking app is locked out too," I said. "Security protocol? Since I reported the fraud while I'm technically traveling myself, the bank has put a hold on all outgoing transfers until I can verify my identity in person at a branch." "There are branches in Maui," Gary yelled. "Not my bank," I said. "I use a private wealth management firm. The nearest branch is in San Francisco. Look, I am sure you can figure this out. You are resourceful people. Eat at the food trucks. Go to the grocery store. It will be a fun adventure. Like camping." "We are at a resort," Bella screamed. "We are not camping." "Well, you are certainly not dining at Spago anymore," I said. "I have to go. Mom, I have a function to attend." "Annalise, wait, do not hang up. How are we supposed to get back to the hotel? We are miles away." "Walk," I said. "It is a beautiful night. The exercise will do you good." I ended the call. I imagined them standing on the curb outside the restaurant. The valet parking attendants would be looking at them, waiting for a ticket they did not have. They would have to walk. It was 3 miles back to the Paradise Palms, 3 miles in heels, in humidity, along a dark road. I checked my makeup in the mirror. Perfect. I left the villa and walked to the main ballroom of the Sapphire Cove. The event tonight was the Ocean Blue Charity Gala, a fundraiser for marine conservation. Tickets were $2,000 a plate. I had bought a table. As I entered the ballroom, the flashbulbs went off. I was wearing a dress made of liquid silver that clung to my body like a second skin. I held a glass of champagne in one hand and a bidding paddle in the other. The room was filled with the elite of the island tech billionaires. Hollywood producers, local politicians. I moved through the crowd like a shark in a coral reef, shaking hands, making introductions, laughing at jokes that were not funny. A photographer from Maui Modern magazine approached me. Ms. Carver. Over here, stunning dress. I posed. I smiled. I looked like a woman who owned the world. Is your family joining you tonight? The photographer asked, making polite conversation. I heard the Carvers were on the island. Oh, no, I said, my voice carrying just loud enough for the people nearby to hear. My family prefers a more rustic experience. They are really into hiking and budgeting right now. I admire their discipline. I, unfortunately, have a weakness for charity and good champagne. The people around me chuckled. A wealthy older woman patted my arm. Good for you, dear. It is important to carve your own path. I spent the next 2 hours bidding on items I did not need. I bought a signed guitar. I bought a trip to Bora Bora. I spent $15,000 in under an hour, all while my family was likely trudging along the side of the highway, swatting mosquitoes and blaming each other for their misfortune. At 10 o'clock, I stepped out onto the balcony of the ballroom to get some air. I looked down toward the road that connected the resorts. I saw 4 small figures walking under the streetlights. They were far away, but I recognized Bella's stumbling gait. She had probably taken off her heels and was walking barefoot on the asphalt. I saw the slump of Gary's shoulders. They were hot, tired, broke, and angry, and they were walking past the entrance to the Sapphire Cove. I wondered if they looked up. I wondered if they saw the lights of the gala, heard the jazz music drifting on the wind, saw the silhouette of the woman standing on the balcony. I raised my glass to them. Keep walking, I whispered. You have a long way to go before you learn your lesson. Back in their room, the reality would set in. They had less than $200 in cash between them. They had 6 days left. A hamburger at the hotel pool cost $28. A bottle of water cost $6. They were not just broke. They were insolvent in a microeconomy designed to extract wealth. Kyle would be looking at his bank balance, calculating how many shifts he would have to pick up to recover the cost of that one dinner. He would look at Bella, smeared makeup and blistered feet, and he would wonder if she was worth it. Bella would be looking at her phone, seeing the photos of me at the gala that were already hitting the local hashtags. She would see me with the mayor. She would see me with the celebrities. She would see the life she thought she deserved, being lived by the sister she had tried to erase, and Mom. Mom would be realizing that the Bank of Annalise had not just closed for the day. It had been boarded up, and she was on the wrong side of the door. I turned back to the party. The night was young, and I had more networking to do. Survival of the fittest was not just a theory. It was a lifestyle, and I was the apex predator. The layout of Wailea is deceptive. To the untrained eye, the resorts bleed into one another along the coastline, a continuous ribbon of manicured grass and golden sand. It creates the illusion that paradise is a shared experience, that the boundary between the 4-star tourist trap and the 6-star enclave is merely a hedge or a footpath. But as a crisis director, I know that the most impenetrable walls are often invisible until you hit them. I knew Bella was coming before she even left her room. My assumption was based on a simple predictive model: desperation seeks proximity to resources. Bella was broke, humiliated, and hungry for content. She knew I was at the Sapphire Cove. My Instagram post had been geographically unambiguous, and in her warped logic, my physical presence meant my wallet was within reach. She likely convinced herself that if she could just see me face to face, she could bully or guilt me into unlocking the credit cards. I sat on the terrace of the resort's open-air lobby, a vantage point that offered a clear view of the coastal path connecting the Paradise Palms to our property. I was drinking an iced latte made with macadamia nut milk. Reviewing a contract on my tablet, I looked the part of a relaxed vacationer, but in reality, I was the general overlooking the battlefield. At 10 in the morning, 2 figures emerged from the public beach access path. Bella was wearing a sheer sarong over a neon bikini, a large straw hat, and oversized sunglasses. It was an outfit designed for a pool cabana, not a tactical infiltration. Kyle trailed behind her, looking significantly less confident. He wore a faded tank top and carried a beach bag that looked deflated, much like his ego. They approached the lower gate of the Sapphire Cove. This was not a gate you could simply push open. It was guarded by a discreet security station manned by 2 officers in white linen uniforms. They looked like concierges, but I knew they were former military contractors. I watched as Bella strutted up to the podium. I could not hear the conversation from my perch, but I could read the body language perfectly. She flipped her hair. She pointed at the resort. She smiled her influencer smile, the one that usually got her free drinks at dive bars. The guard on the left shook his head. Bella's posture stiffened. She gestured more wildly now. She pointed a manicured finger toward the main building, likely screaming my name. Kyle stepped forward, trying to mediate, but Bella pushed him aside. She was escalating. This was the moment I had prepared for. Yesterday, upon checking in, I had a private meeting with the head of security, a man named Mr. Cahill. I had handed him a dossier. It contained high-resolution photographs of my mother, Gary, Bella, and Kyle. It also contained a legal document I had drafted myself, titled Notice of Trespass and Harassment Prevention. I picked up my phone and dialed the security desk. "This is Annalise Carver in the presidential villa," I said. "I believe there is a disturbance at the south gate." "Yes, Ms. Carver," the dispatcher replied instantly. "We have 2 individuals attempting access. They claim to be family. They are becoming belligerent." "Execute the protocol," I said calmly. "Do not let them in, and make sure the guests in the infinity pool get a good show." "Understood." I watched as Mr. Cahill himself emerged from the guardhouse. He was a mountain of a man, 6 feet 4 inches tall, with a calm demeanor that was far more terrifying than aggression. He walked up to Bella, who was now trying to physically push past the junior guard. "Mr. Cahill held up a hand. It was a stop sign made of flesh and bone. He spoke to her. Bella screamed back. I could faintly hear her voice carrying over the sound of the ocean breeze. "That is my sister. You cannot stop me. I have rights." Mr. Cahill did not argue. He simply produced a laminated clipboard. He held it up, facing Bella, but angled enough that Kyle could see it too. On the clipboard was the document I had signed. At the top, in bold red letters, were the words, "Do not admit." Below that were their 4 faces, printed in color, enlarged from the security footage I had captured at my mother's house. It was the no-fly list of hospitality. Bella froze. She stared at her own face on the clipboard. To be on a VIP list is her dream. To be on a blacklist is her nightmare. The scene was attracting attention. Guests lounging by the exclusive adult-only pool turned their heads. These were people who paid $3,000 a night for silence. They did not appreciate the screeching of a desperate influencer. "You are embarrassing me," Bella shrieked, stomping her foot. "I am going to call the police. Please do." "Mr. Cahill said. His voice was deep enough to carry to where I sat. "We have already contacted the Wailea Patrol. You are trespassing on private property. You have 60 seconds to return to the public beach before you are physically removed." Kyle looked at the clipboard, then at the resort, and finally at Bella. For the first time, I saw the gears turning in his head. Kyle was not a smart man, but he was observant. He looked at the impeccably dressed security staff. He looked at the manicured grounds. He realized that this level of exclusion required authority. He realized that his girlfriend, who claimed to be the victim of a crazy, jealous sister, was currently the one acting like a lunatic, while the crazy sister had seemingly organized a military-grade blockade against them. "Bella, let us go," Kyle said, grabbing her arm. "We are on a list, babe, a literal list. She knew we were coming." "Get off me," Bella yelled, shoving him. "She is in there drinking my champagne, Annalise. I know you can hear me. Come out here and face me." "Mr." Cahill nodded to his junior officers. They stepped forward. They did not touch her aggressively. They simply occupied her space, forcing her backwards step by step. It was a wall of white linen moving forward. Bella stumbled back onto the public sand. She lost her footing and fell onto her backside. Her large hat tumbled off, rolling into a patch of seaweed. Laughter erupted from the pool deck. A group of tech executives were pointing. Someone was filming with their phone. The humiliation was absolute. Bella scrambled up, brushing wet sand off her legs, her face a mask of red fury. She grabbed her hat and stormed off down the beach, not waiting for Kyle. Kyle stood there for a moment longer. He looked up at the resort. He shielded his eyes against the sun, scanning the balconies. His gaze swept over the lobby terrace. I lowered my sunglasses for a brief second. I raised my coffee cup in a mock salute. I do not know if he saw me, but he stiffened. He looked at the clipboard again, which Mr. Kahili was still holding. He looked at the photo of himself on the list. It was a photo from the kitchen video, him eating an apple. He realized then that I had been watching. He realized that the victim narrative Bella had spun for him was a lie. A victim does not have the power to banish people from paradise. A victim does not have a security team on speed dial. Kyle turned and walked away. He did not run after Bella. He walked slowly, a man reevaluating his entire relationship. I finished my latte. Phase 1 of the physical security protocol was complete, but I knew the psychological warfare would follow immediately. 30 minutes later, my phone vibrated. It was not Bella. It was Mom. Text message from Mom Annalise. Please, I am scared. My chest hurts. I think it is my heart. The stress is too much. I cannot breathe. Please come to the hotel. I need you. I stared at the screen. It was the health card. It was her trump card. Whenever she backed herself into a corner she could not spend her way out of, she developed a mysterious ailment, a migraine, a palpitation, a dizzy spell. It was designed to trigger my guilt and force me into the role of caretaker. If I went to her, I would lose. I would be back in the trap, soothing her, paying for things to reduce her stress. But if I ignored her and she actually had a heart attack, I would be the villain forever. I did not go to the Paradise Palms. Instead, I opened my contacts and found the number for Dr. Wu, Private Concierge Medicine Maui. Dr. Wu was not a doctor who took insurance. He was a doctor who took American Express Platinum. He charged $2,000 for a house call. Dr. Wu, I said when he answered. This is Annalise Carver. I have a medical situation involving an elderly relative at the Paradise Palms. I am currently unavailable to attend to her, but I need you to go immediately. I want a full cardiac workup, EKG, blood pressure, enzyme test, everything. Certainly. Ms. Carver. Doctor, Wu said. I can be there in 20 minutes. Bill it to my firm, I said. And doctor, I want a full written report of your findings sent to me immediately. No sugarcoating. Understood. I waited. The next hour was the only time I felt a flicker of genuine anxiety. Not guilt, but the cold calculation of risk. If she was dying, my plan would have to pivot. At 1 p.m, my phone pinged with an email from Dr. Wu. Attached was a PDF report. I opened it. Patient Linda Carver. Location Paradise Palms Resort. Room 204. Complaint, chest pain, shortness of breath, palpitations. I scrolled down to the findings section. Blood pressure 130/85, slightly elevated due to anxiety, EKG, normal sinus rhythm, no ischemic changes, troponin levels negative, diagnosis acute dyspepsia, severe indigestion and gastroesophageal reflux disease. Physician notes. Patient admitted to consuming 3 convenience store burritos and a large bag of spicy chips for lunch due to lack of dining options. Symptoms are consistent with excessive sodium and nitrate intake combined with dehydration. Patient is not in cardiac distress. Prescribed antacids and recommended water intake. Patient became agitated when informed she was not dying. I read the report twice. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my sparkling water. She wasn't having a heart attack. She was having gas. She had tried to manipulate me into a dramatic bedside reconciliation, hoping I would rush in. See her clutching her chest, and pay for the rest of the trip out of fear. Instead, she got a stranger in a suit telling her she ate too many gas station burritos because she was too broke to eat real food. I forwarded the PDF report to Bella, Gary, and Mom. Then I sent a text to the group chat I had ignored for 24 hours. "Me doctor. Wu says you are fine. Mom. He says the cure is to stop eating junk food. Unfortunately, since you have no budget for high-quality protein, I suggest you stick to plain rice. I have paid his $2,000 fee. Consider that my anniversary gift. Do not contact me with fake emergencies again, or the next doctor I send will be a coroner." I looked over at the Paradise Palms. I could almost feel the shame radiating from room 204. The breach had failed. The guilt trip had failed. The realization was setting in for them. I was not just a sister or a daughter anymore. I was a sovereign nation with closed borders, and they were refugees who had burned their own passports. I stood up and smoothed my dress. It was time for a massage at the spa. I had requested the Lomi Lomi treatment. Designed to release tension, I did not think I had much tension left to release, but I was willing to try. As I walked toward the spa, I passed Mr. Kahili at the security post. "Any further issues, Mr. Kahili?" I asked. "No, Mrs. Carver," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "The young man, the boyfriend, he came back a few minutes ago, alone." "Oh," I stopped. "Did he try to get in?" "No, Mr. Cahill said. He just asked if we knew where the nearest bus stop was. He said he needed to get to the airport. He had his golf clubs with him." I smiled. Kyle was jumping ship. "Did you help him?" I asked. I pointed him toward the public highway. "Mr. Kahili said. "It is a long walk." "Good," I said. "He needs the cardio." The house of cards was not just shaking. The first wall had just collapsed. Kyle was leaving. That meant Bella was alone with our parents, without her photographer, without her prop, and without the engagement ring she had come here for. I walked into the scent of eucalyptus and lavender, ready to relax. The silence of my phone was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. The desperation of a narcissist when denied an audience is a dangerous thing. When Bella was escorted off the beach by security, humiliated in front of the very demographic she desperately wanted to impress, she did not retreat into introspection. She retreated into fiction. I knew it was coming. In crisis management, we call this the asymmetric escalation. When a hostile party realizes they cannot win on the facts, money, access, legality, they shift the battlefield to emotion. They weaponize victimhood. It happened at 3 p.m. I was in my villa, reviewing a merger agreement for a client in Zurich, when my proprietary media monitoring software pinged. It wasn't a standard alert. It was a red-level threat notification, indicating a rapid spike in negative sentiment associated with my name and my employer, Aurelia Solutions. I opened the dashboard. The source was TikTok. Bella had posted a video. It was titled, "The Truth About My Rich Sister, How She Stole Our Future." I clicked play. Bella was sitting on the edge of the bed in the standard room at the Paradise Palms. The lighting was dim, casting shadows that made her look gaunt and traumatized. Her mascara was smeared artfully under her eyes. "Hi guys," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know I usually post happy content, but I cannot fake it anymore. I am currently stranded in Hawaii. My sister, Annalise Carver, lured us here for a family reunion and then abandoned us without food or money." She wiped a tear. "But that is not the worst part. The reason she is so rich, the reason she is staying at the 6-star resort next door while we starve, she stole our father's inheritance. When Dad died, she was the executor. She told us there was nothing left. But suddenly she is buying designer bags and flying private. She took the money meant for my college, meant for my mom's retirement, and she kept it all. And now, she is laughing at us from her ivory tower." The video ended with a shot of her empty wallet and a plea, "Please share this. The world needs to know who Annalise Carver really is. She works for Aurelia Solutions, and she is a fraud. I watched the view count tick upward. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. The comments were a cesspool of uninformed rage. Eat the rich. Find her employer, get her fired. Justice for Bella. This is financial abuse. Call the FBI. Doxer 99. I found her company email. Let's flood it. My heart rate did not increase. In fact, it slowed down. This was no longer a family squabble. Bella had made two fatal errors. First, she had accused me of a felony embezzlement of an estate. Second, she had named my employer. She had dragged Aurelius Solutions into a domestic dispute. That meant she had just declared war on a multinational corporation. My work phone rang. It was Marcus, the CEO of Aurelius. "Annalise," Marcus said. His voice was gravelly and devoid of warmth. "Why is our Contact Us page crashing, and why are there 400 tweets calling for your resignation trending under the hashtag #CarverThief? It is a personal matter that has metastasized, Marcus," I said, typing furiously on my laptop. "My sister is attempting a smear campaign to extort money. She has made false allegations regarding an estate settlement." "Fix it," Marcus said. "I do not care about your family drama, Annalisa, but if this impacts the stock price or our reputation for discretion, you are done. You have 24 hours to kill the story." "I do not need 24 hours," I replied. "I need 2. Make it happen." Click. I set the phone down. I took a deep breath. Bella thought the court of public opinion was the only court that mattered. She forgot that I operated in the court of evidence. She had built her castle on a swamp of lies, and I had the architectural blueprints of the swamp. I did not respond on TikTok. Engaging with a mob only validates their anger. Instead, I initiated what we call the Truth Bomb Protocol. I opened my secure cloud storage. I located the folder labeled Estate Family Finances. Bella's claim was that I stole our father's inheritance. The reality was that when my father died 6 years ago, he left behind $400,000 in gambling debts and a mortgage that was underwater. I had not taken a dime. I had used my own savings money I earned from 80-hour work weeks to pay off the bookies, so they wouldn't break my mother's legs. I had refinanced the house in my name to keep a roof over their heads. I began to compile a dossier. Exhibit A, the probate court records, a certified document showing the estate's value at the time of death, negative $412,000. Exhibit B, bank transfer receipts from Annalise Carver to First National Bank Mortgage Services, monthly payments for the last 5 years, totaling over $180,000. Exhibit C, the tuition payments for Bella's Influencer Academy and her failed cosmetology school venture, paid by me. Exhibit D, the smoking gun, the email thread from 3 days ago, from Linda Carver to Annalise Carver. Subject: flight changes. Annalise, honey, we think it is best if you do not come. The tickets are too expensive, and we need to save the budget. Bella and I agree it is better this way. I did not post this to TikTok. TikTok users do not care about facts. They care about drama. Instead, I targeted the nodes of influence in Bella's and my mother's real lives. I created a sleek, professional PDF document. I titled it, Correction of Record the Carver Family Finances. I sent it via email to a curated list. I sent it to Aunt Susan and Cousin Mark, the family gossips who controlled the narrative at Thanksgiving. I sent it to the pastor of my mother's church. I sent it to the landlord of Bella's apartment in Denver, who was also a family friend. I sent it to the talent agency Bella was trying to sign with. And finally, I sent it to Marcus and the HR department at Aurelius Solutions to clear my professional name. Then, I waited. The dissemination of truth in a closed network is slower than a viral video, but it is far more destructive. It works like poison in the groundwater. At 6 p.m, the tide began to turn. I was monitoring the family group chat, the one I had supposedly been kicked out of, but which I could still read because I paid the phone bill and had mirrored the account. Aunt Susan was the first to strike. She didn't text me. She texted Linda. Susan. Linda, I just saw the probate documents Annalise sent. Is it true? Did Gary really leave you in that much debt? Annalise paid it all. My mother didn't reply. Then Cousin Mark chimed in on Facebook. He posted a status update, tagging Bella. Imagine lying about your sister stealing an inheritance when she is actually paying the mortgage on the house you sleep in. Some people have no shame. The comments on Bella's TikTok started to change. The internet detectives had found Mark's post. User 88. Wait. The cousin says the dad died bankrupt. There was no inheritance. Truth seeker. I just saw court records someone leaked. The estate was insolvent. The sister paid the debts. Scam alert. This girl is lying for clout. She is just mad she is broke. Inside the Paradise Palms, the atmosphere must have been suffocating. My mother's phone began to ring. It wasn't me. It was her friends. It was the church ladies, people who had seen the receipts. Linda, how could you let Bella say those things? After all Annalise has done for you. You told us Gary left you a nest egg. Was that a lie too? The shame spiral had begun. My mother lived for social standing. I had just stripped her naked in the town square. But the final blow was reserved for Bella. Kyle had returned to the room. He hadn't been able to leave the island. I found out later that the flights were fully booked, and the standby tickets were $300 money he didn't have after the dinner disaster. He was stuck there for one last night, forced to share the space with the chaos. I imagined the scene. It was dark in the room. Bella was likely asleep, exhausted from the adrenaline of her viral performance, clutching her phone like a talisman. Kyle was awake. He was sitting in the corner, on the cheap chair, staring at the wall. His phone buzzed. It was a DM on Instagram. I had sent the dossier to him directly. Me. Kyle, before you let Bella ruin your reputation along with hers, you should read this. It contains the financial reality of the family you are trying to marry into. I saw the read receipt appear. Kyle opened the file. He read the mortgage statements. He read the debt settlements. He read the emails where my mother and Bella conspired to cut me out of the trip to save money so Bella could have the spotlight. He looked at the sleeping form of his girlfriend, the girl who had told him she was a trust fund baby, the girl who said I was the greedy villain who stole her birthright. He realized he was dating a fraud who was actively trying to destroy the only person who was keeping a roof over her head. He stood up. He walked over to the bed. Bella stirred. He didn't wake her. He simply picked up her phone, which was charging on the nightstand. He knew her passcode. It was her birthday. He unlocked it. He opened TikTok. He saw the video. He saw the lies. And then, he saw the new email notification pop up on her screen. It was from a law firm, Steinberg, O'Hara Vance, my lawyers. Subject, cease and desist order. Immediate action required. Kyle tapped on it. Dear Ms. Isabella Carver, we represent Ms. Annalise Carver. You are hereby notified that your recent social media posts contain demonstrably false and defamatory statements regarding our client and her handling of the estate of the late Robert Carver. We have attached court-certified records proving the estate was insolvent. Your accusations of embezzlement constitute libel per se under federal and state law. We demand you immediately remove the video and issue a public retraction. Failure to comply within 60 minutes will result in the filing of a civil lawsuit seeking damages in excess of $5 million, as well as an injunction against your social media accounts. Kyle dropped the phone on the bed. The screen glowed in the darkness, illuminating Bella's face. $5 million. Kyle backed away. He grabbed his duffel bag. He didn't care that he had nowhere to go. He didn't care that it was the middle of the night. He couldn't be in that room. He couldn't be near the radioactivity of Bella's stupidity. He walked out of the room, leaving the door slightly ajar. I sat on my balcony at Sapphire Cove. The ocean was black and rhythmic. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. The video is down, Marcus said, and she posted a retraction. I was misinformed about the details of the estate. It is weak, but it clears the company. Good, I said. You are terrifying. Annalisa, Marcus said. There was a hint of respect in his voice. I am efficient, Marcus. There is a difference. Take the rest of the week off. But if I see your name in the press again, you are fired. Understood. I hung up. I looked at the Paradise Palms. The light in room 204 had just turned on. I could see a silhouette pacing frantically. Bella had woken up. She had seen the email. She had seen that the video was gone, likely removed by Kyle before he left. Or perhaps she did it herself in a panic. She was reading the comments on her retraction post. The internet had turned on her. She was being branded a liar, a grifter, a brat. She called me. I watched the phone ring. Bella. I declined the call. She called again. I declined again. Then I sent her one text message. Me. The lawyers are serious. Bella. One more word about me, one more lie, and I will not just sue you, I will foreclose on the house. I had chosen a private dining room at a mid-range seafood restaurant in Kihei. It was not the opulence of Spago, nor was it the degradation of a fast food counter. It was a place of business. The walls were lined with dark wood. The air conditioning was set to a crisp 68 degrees, and the acoustics were designed to absorb sound. I wanted no eavesdroppers for what was about to happen. I sat at the head of the rectangular mahogany table. I was dressed in a charcoal blazer and a white silk blouse, my boardroom armor. In front of me, there was no food, no wine, and no silverware. There was only a single, thick black binder. I had sent the message to my mother at noon dinner. 7 sharp, Tommy Bahamas, private room B. I order, you eat, we talk once. If you are 1 minute late, the offer is rescinded, and I block your numbers permanently at 701. The heavy wooden door creaked open. They filed in like prisoners walking to the gallows. My mother led the procession, her eyes swollen, her face devoid of makeup for the first time in 20 years. She wore a simple sundress that looked wrinkled. Gary followed, staring intently at the carpet. His shoulders hunched so high they touched his ears. Then came Bella. She looked like a ghost of the girl who had arrived yesterday. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore oversized sunglasses indoors, presumably to hide the ravages of crying or to avoid making eye contact. And finally, Kyle. I was surprised he came, given that he had walked out the night before, but then I saw the look in his eyes, cold, detached, observant. He was not there as a member of their tribe anymore. He was there as a witness. He gave me a curt nod as he entered. Acknowledging the dossier I had sent him, I returned the nod. Sit, I said. They pulled out the chairs. The scraping sound against the floor was agonizingly loud in the silence. My mother sat to my right, Gary to her right. Bella sat to my left, and Kyle took the seat furthest away, near the door. Annalise, Mom began, her voice cracking instantly. She reached across the table, her hand trembling as she tried to touch mine. Oh, honey, thank God. I knew you would not abandon us. I knew you had a heart. I did not move my hand, but I looked at it as if a cockroach were attempting to crawl across my knuckles. She retracted her fingers slowly. We are not here to discuss my heart. Mother, I said, my voice flat and monochromatic. We are here to discuss the only thing that has ever mattered in this family, arithmetic. Can we just order first? Gary mumbled, looking at the empty table. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning. I have already ordered for you, I said. The grilled mahi-mahi with brown rice and steamed broccoli. No appetizers, no dessert, and tap water. It is nutritious, cost-effective, and efficient, just like the life you are going to have to learn to live. Bella let out a scoff, a short, sharp sound of defiance. You are enjoying this, aren't you, playing God? I am not playing God. Bella, I replied, locking eyes with her through her dark lenses. God forgives. I do not. The waiter entered, silently placing the plates in front of them. The smell of the fish filled the room. Gary picked up his fork immediately. his hunger overriding his shame. Mom just stared at the food, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. "Eat," I commanded. "You will need the energy." I waited until they had taken their first few bites. The room was filled with the sound of chewing and the hum of the ventilation system. I let the tension build until it was a physical weight pressing down on their chests. Then, I opened the black binder. The sound of the heavy cover hitting the table made Gary jump. "This," I said, placing my hand on the stack of papers, "is the Carver family financial report. I spent the morning compiling it. It is a comprehensive audit of the last 5 years. Annalise, please," Mom whispered. "Not here, not in front of Kyle." "Kyle already knows," I said. "In fact, Kyle is the only one at this table who seems to understand the concept of solvency. Besides, since you tried to bring him into the family on my dime, he deserves to see the price of admission." I flipped to the first tab. "Let us begin with the basics. Gary, your Ford F-150. You told me 3 years ago that you needed it for your contracting business, a business that, according to my tax records, has generated exactly $0 in revenue." I slid a piece of paper across the table. "Here is the loan payoff confirmation. $42,000, paid by me. I believed you when you said you were building something, but I checked the odometer reading from your last service appointment. You have put 80,000 miles on it. Mostly driving to the casino in Blackhawk, correct?" Gary choked on a piece of broccoli. He turned red, coughing into his napkin. He did not deny it. I flipped the page. "Bella, the Influencer Academy in Los Angeles. $12,000 for a 6-week course on how to take selfies. The cosmetology license you never finished. $8,000. The credit card debt I paid off last year because you said you needed it to build your credit score. $15,000. I looked at her. She was not eating. She was gripping her fork so hard her knuckles were white. "You said that was a gift," Bella hissed. "Sisters help sisters. And mothers protect daughters," I countered. "But yesterday, you and Mother conspired to leave me behind because I was too expensive. You cut me out to save a few $100s on a flight, while I was spending tens of thousands to keep you afloat. We just wanted this one trip to be about us," Mom cried out, finding her voice. "You are always so controlling. Annalise, you hold money over our heads like a weapon. We just wanted to breathe without feeling like we owed you something." "If you wanted to breathe freely," I said, leaning forward, "you should not have built your house with my bricks." I flipped to the final section of the binder. This was the nuclear option, the secret I had kept for 6 months, waiting for the right moment. I had hoped to never use it. I had hoped to let them live in ignorance, but they had forced my hand. "Speaking of the house," I said softly. The room went deadly silent. Even the chewing stopped. "Mom, Gary, do you recognize the name Blue Horizon Holdings, LLC?" My mother's face went from pale to a terrified shade of gray. She looked at Gary. Gary dropped his fork. It clattered loudly against the china plate. "I see that you do," I said. I pulled out a document stamped with the county clerk's seal. 2 years ago," I narrated, my voice calm and clinical, "you two took out a second mortgage on the family home, the home that I paid off the original mortgage for after Dad died. You took out $200,000 against the equity." I turned to Bella. "And where did that money go?" "It went to Bella for an investment opportunity, a cryptocurrency called Moonrise that Bella's friend promised would turn into millions." Bella shrank in her seat. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "It was a rug pull," I continued. "The money vanished in 3 weeks. $200,000. Gone. We were going to pay it back," Gary stammered. "We thought Bella said—" "You stopped making payments on the second mortgage 6 months ago," I said. "The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings. You hid the letters. You shredded the notices. You thought if you ignored it, it would go away." "How do you know this?" Mom whispered. She looked like a cornered animal. "Because I buy debt," I said. "It is part of my portfolio. When the bank put the distressed note up for sale, my automated systems flagged the address. My childhood address. I paused to let the reality sink in. I bought the note. Mom, I bought the debt through a shell company called Blue Horizon Holdings. I did it to save you from being evicted by the sheriff. I have been paying the taxes and the insurance for 6 months, waiting for you to tell me the truth, waiting for you to ask for help. I slammed the binder shut. But you never did. Instead, you took the money I gave you for house repairs and used it to book this trip to Hawaii. You decided to celebrate your anniversary on a tropical island while your house was technically owned by a faceless corporation that you stopped paying. You, Mom gasped. You own the house. I own the debt, I corrected. And since the debt exceeds the current value of the house, yes, for all intents and purposes, I own the house. Which brings us to the present moment. I stood up. I walked around the table until I was standing directly behind my mother and Gary. Currently, legally speaking, I am not your daughter right now. I am your creditor, and you are delinquent tenants. You can't do this, Bella screamed, ripping off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red and wild. You are a monster who does that to their own family, who buys their parents' debt just to trap them. A monster. I laughed. A cold, humorless sound. Bella, a monster would have let the bank foreclose. A monster would have let you come home from this trip to find a padlock on the door and your belongings on the curb. I saved you. Again. You call this saving us? Bella spat. You are humiliating us. You are counting every penny, every mistake. You are just a sad, lonely control freak who thinks she can buy love. No, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that echoed in the silent room. I do not think I can buy love. I learned a long time ago that love is too expensive for this family. I am simply paying for compliance. I looked at Bella, then at Mom, then at Gary. Generosity only exists when there is respect, I said, delivering the line I had rehearsed in my mind 1,000 times. When respect disappears, it becomes a transaction. And since you have shown me zero respect, we are now purely in a transactional relationship. I reached into the binder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. This is a repayment plan. It involves the sale of Gary's truck, the liquidation of Bella's designer wardrobe, and a monthly garnishment of Mom's pension. If you agree to this, you can stay in the house as tenants. If you do not, Blue Horizon Holdings will exercise its right to foreclose immediately. You wouldn't, Mom sobbed. I am your mother. And I am the woman you left in Denver because her ticket cost too much. I said, sign it, or find a new place to live by the 1st of the month. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. The air conditioning hummed. My mother wept into her hands. Gary stared at the repayment plan as if it were a death sentence. Then, the chair in the corner scraped against the floor. Kyle stood up. He had been silent for the entire meal. He hadn't touched his fish. He looked at me, then he looked at Bella. Kyle? Bella asked, her voice trembling. Baby, tell her she is crazy. Tell her. Kyle shook his head slowly. He looked exhausted. He looked like a man waking up from a long, feverish dream. She is not crazy, Bella, Kyle said. His voice was steady, resigned. She is the only one making any sense. What? Bella gasped. Whose side are you on? There are no sides, Kyle said. There is just the truth. And the truth is I cannot do this anymore. He looked at me. Annalise, I am sorry. I didn't know about the house. I didn't know about the mortgage. I didn't know any of it. Bella told me her dad left her a trust fund. She told me you were just the jealous stepsister who managed the money. I figured, I said softly. Kyle turned to Bella. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. You lied to me, Kyle said. About everything. About who you are. About your money. About your family. I can handle being broke. Bella, I grew up broke. But I cannot handle the entitlement. I cannot handle watching you treat the person who literally owns the roof over your head like she is the villain. Kyle. No, Bella cried, standing up. We are getting engaged. We are supposed to be a team." "There is no team," Kyle said. "I am not proposing. I am not marrying into this mess. I am done." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, the ring box. He didn't open it. He simply set it on the table next to the untouched plate of mahi-mahi. "You can return that," Kyle said to Bella. "It should cover a month of rent to your sister." "Kyle?" Bella shrieked. Grabbing his arm, he gently but firmly removed her hand. "Goodbye, Bella. Good luck." He looked at me one last time. "Thank you for the dinner, Annalisa, and for the dossier. You saved me a divorce lawyer down the road." Kyle walked out of the room. He didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind him. Bella stood there, frozen, staring at the closed door. Then she looked at the ring box. Then she looked at me. She let out a primal scream of rage and swept the ring box and her plate off the table. They crashed onto the floor, the china shattering, the fish scattering across the carpet. "I hate you," she screamed at me. "You ruined my life. You chased him away. You ruined everything." I did not flinch. I sat calmly, watching her tantrum. "I did not ruin your life, Bella," I said, picking up my glass of water. "I just turned on the lights. If you do not like what you see in the mirror, that is not my fault." I looked at my mother and Gary. They were both staring at me with a mixture of hatred and absolute terror. They knew I held the deed. They knew I held the power. "You have until dessert to sign the agreement," I said, checking my watch. "Although, as I recall, I did not order dessert, so you have about 5 minutes." I took a sip of water. It was cool and refreshing. Across the table, the sound of my mother's weeping was the only accompaniment to the wreckage of their illusions. The dinner was over, and I was the only one who had been fed. The sound of the engagement ring box hitting the floor was not a loud thud. It was a hollow, plastic clatter, insignificant in volume, but cataclysmic in consequence. It marked the precise moment when the centrifugal force of my family's delusion finally tore them apart. Kyle was gone. The door to the private dining room was shut. For 3 seconds, the room was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning. Then, Bella screamed. It was not a scream of heartbreak. I know what heartbreak sounds like. It is a low, keening sound, wet with grief. This was a scream of thwarted entitlement. It was the sound of a toddler who has been told the toy store is closed forever. "You useless, pathetic old woman," Bella shrieked, spinning around to face our mother. "This is your fault. You told me he was locked in. You told me if we brought him here, he would propose. You said Annalisa would pay for it all, and he would think we were rich." "Bella, please," Mom sobbed, her face buried in her napkin. I didn't know he would react like that. You didn't know." Bella grabbed a glass of my water, and hurled it against the far wall. It shattered, spraying shards of glass over the expensive mahogany paneling. "You don't know anything. You are broke. You are a liar, and because of you, I am going to be single and poor." How am I supposed to explain this to my followers? How am I supposed to explain that I got dumped at a seafood restaurant because my family is trash? She turned to Gary. My stepfather was staring at the pile of broccoli on his plate, as if it contained the secrets of the universe. "And you," Bella yelled, pointing a trembling finger at him, "you just sat there. You let Annalise humiliate us. You are not a man. You are just a parasite attached to Mom." Gary stopped chewing. He swallowed slowly. He placed his fork down on the table, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the placemat. Then, he did something I had not seen him do in 15 years. He looked up, and his eyes were not glazed over with their usual passivity. They were burning with a cold, exhausted clarity. "Shut up, Bella," Gary said. His voice was not loud. It was low, guttural, and absolutely terrifying in its finality. Bella froze. Her mouth hung open. "Excuse me?" "I said, shut up," Gary repeated, pushing his chair back and standing up. He looked at Bella. Then he looked at Mom. And finally, he looked at me. He did not look at me with anger. He looked at me with an expression that bordered on apology. "I am tired," Gary said. addressing the room but looking at his wife. "Linda, I am tired. I am tired of the lies. I am tired of driving a truck I cannot afford to impress neighbors I do not like. I am tired of pretending that your daughter," he gestured to Bella, "is a princess who is waiting to be discovered, instead of a lazy brat who refuses to get a job." "Gary?" Mom gasped, looking up from her napkin. "How can you say that?" "Because it is true," Gary said, his voice rising slightly. "Annalise was right. Every word she said tonight was right. We are leeches. I knew about the house. Linda, I knew the notices were coming. I saw them in the mail before you hid them. I just didn't say anything because I was too cowardly to start a fight. I let you dig this hole, but I'm not going to let you bury me in it." He turned to Bella. "Kyle left because he has self-respect, something no one at this side of the table has. You want to blame someone? Blame yourself. You treat people like accessories. Annalise is the only one of you who actually works for a living, and you treat her like an ATM machine that you can kick when it doesn't dispense cash fast enough." "I am your daughter," Bella wailed, playing the victim card again. "You are my stepdaughter," Gary corrected. "And right now, I do not like you very much." Gary looked at me. "I will sign the papers. Annalise, I will sell the truck. I will take the bus to work if I have to. I just want out of this fantasy." My mother looked at her husband. She looked at the door where Kyle had exited. She looked at me, sitting calmly at the head of the table. In that moment, I saw the light go out behind her eyes. Linda Carver had spent her entire life triangulating people against each other to maintain her comfort. She used me for money. She used Gary for emotional padding. She used Bella as a proxy for her own lost youth. Now, the geometry had collapsed. The money was a loan she couldn't pay. The emotional padding had just resigned, and the proxy was a screaming banshee who hated her. "We have to go," Mom whispered. Her voice was hollow. "We have to go back to the hotel." "About that," I said, breaking my silence. They all turned to look at me. "I received a notification while you were screaming," I said, tapping my phone. "It seems the Paradise Palms attempted to run the incidental hold on the room for the third time tonight, since the card is reported stolen, and since you have provided no alternative method of payment, they have locked you out." "What?" Bella breathed. "Your key cards will not work," I explained calmly. "Your luggage has likely been removed from the room and placed in the holding area behind the front desk. You are, effectively, homeless in Hawaii." "Annalise," Mom begged, reaching across the table again. "Please, we have nowhere to go. It is dark. It is dangerous." "It is not dangerous," I corrected. "Wailea is one of the safest neighborhoods in America. However, sleeping on a park bench is illegal. So, here is what is going to happen." I opened the black binder again. I took out 3 copies of a legal document I had drafted the night before. "This is a settlement agreement," I said. "It outlines the terms of the debt repayment we discussed, but it also includes a non-disclosure agreement. It stipulates that you are forbidden from discussing my personal life, my finances, or my employment with anyone, not on social media, not to the neighbors, not to the church choir. If you violate this, the penalty is immediate foreclosure and a lawsuit for defamation." I placed a pen on top of the documents. "If you sign this, right now, I will book you flights home. If you do not sign, I will leave you here to figure it out. The homeless shelters in Kahului are surprisingly clean. I hear," Bella looked at the paper, "I am not signing an NDA. I have a right to my story." "Your story is that you are a squatter in my house," I said. "Sign the paper, Bella. Or stay here and ask the waiter if he needs a dishwasher." Gary stepped forward. He picked up the pen. He did not hesitate. He signed his name with a shaky hand. "Thank you, Gary," I said. He pushed the paper toward Mom. She looked at it through her tears. She realized that signing meant admitting she was no longer the matriarch. She was a dependent. She was a child in the care of the daughter she had neglected. She signed. "Bella?" I asked. Bella looked at the pen. She looked at the door. She looked at her phone, which was likely blowing up with hate comments from the retraction she had posted earlier. She had no boyfriend. She had no money. She had no leverage. She snatched the pen and scribbled her signature so hard she tore the paper. "I hate you," she whispered. "Noted," I said. I collected the documents and checked the signatures. They were valid. I placed them back in the binder. "Now," I said, pulling out my phone. "Let us get you home." I opened the airline app. Normally, when I book travel, I filter by shortest duration or fewest stops. Tonight, I filtered by lowest price. I found a gem. "Okay," I said, looking up at them with a polite smile. "I have found you a way home. It departs tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Direct?" Mom asked hopefully. "Please tell me it is direct." "Not exactly," I said. I turned the screen so they could see the itinerary. Leg 1 Kahului to Seattle, 5 hours. You have a 4-hour layover in Seattle. Gary nodded. "That is not too bad." "Leg 2, I continued. Seattle to Houston. "Houston," Bella shrieked. "Houston is in Texas. That is the wrong direction. Denver is right there. It is a saver fare." I shrugged. "You fly to the hub, 4 hours to Houston, then you have an 8-hour overnight layover in Houston." "Overnight?" Mom gasped. "Do we get a hotel?" "No," I said. "The ticket does not include accommodation. You will have to sleep in the terminal. I recommend the benches near Gate C. They have slightly more padding." "And then?" Gary asked wearily. "Leg 3 Houston to Denver, another 3 hours, total travel time 28 hours and 45 minutes. 28 hours? Bella yelled. "That is insane. You can get to Australia in less time. You are doing this on purpose." "I am doing it on budget," I corrected. "The tickets are non-refundable and non-changeable, and because I booked the basic economy saver fare, you are assigned seats at check-in. It is highly likely you will all be in middle seats, separated from one another." I tapped the purchase button. "Done," I said. "The confirmation code has been emailed to you." "Mom," I stood up. I smoothed my silk skirt. I picked up the black binder, the weight of it feeling like a trophy in my hands. "The check for the dinner has been paid," I said. "You should probably head to the airport now. Since you do not have a hotel room, you might as well get a head start on security. It is a long night ahead." "How do we get to the airport?" Mom asked, her voice trembling. "It is 30 miles away." "Uber," I said, "or a taxi. I believe Gary still has that $20 in his wallet. That should get you halfway there. You can walk the rest. It is a lovely coastal road." I did not wait for their response. I turned and walked toward the door. "Annalise!" Mom called out one last time. It was a cry of pure desperation. I stopped, my hand on the brass handle. I did not turn around. "Yes, Mother." "Do you feel anything?" she asked. "Seeing us like this? Do you feel anything at all?" I paused. I thought about the question honestly. I searched my internal landscape for guilt, for sadness, for that familial tug that is supposed to exist between blood relations. I found nothing, just a clean, cool silence. It was the feeling of a balance sheet that had finally been reconciled after years of red ink. "I feel," I said, opening the door, "like I finally got what I paid for." I walked out into the humid Hawaiian night. The air smelled of jasmine and salt. I signaled for my private driver, who was waiting at the curb in a black Cadillac Escalade. "Where to, Ms. Carver?" the driver asked, as he opened the door for me. "The Sapphire Cove," I said, sliding onto the leather seat. "I have a flight to catch in the morning, too, but mine does not leave until noon." As the car pulled away, I looked back at the restaurant. Through the window, I could see 3 figures sitting at a table covered in broken glass and cold fish. They looked small. They looked defeated. They looked like strangers. And for the first time in my life, that is exactly what they were. The shuttle bus stop was located at the edge of the resort complex, a concrete island illuminated by the harsh, sodium yellow glare of a street lamp. It was not the porte cochere of the Sapphire Cove with its valet service and scented towels. It was a functional transit point where the Speedy shuttle collected tourists who were too budget-conscious for a taxi and too weighed down for the public bus. I stood there like an apparition from a different world. I was wearing a floor-length slip dress made of raw white silk that shimmered in the moonlight, paired with strappy silver sandals that had never touched public pavement. My hair was blown out to perfection, catching the ocean breeze. In stark, brutal contrast, my family looked like refugees from a natural disaster of their own making. They were huddled on the curb. Gary sat on his suitcase, his head in his hands. Bella was sitting on the concrete, picking at the chipped polish on her toes. She was holding a plastic ABC store bag that contained, I assumed, the meager rations for their 28-hour journey, likely generic water bottles and Spam musubi, since they could not afford the airport prices. My mother stood nervously by the signpost, clutching her purse to her chest as if she expected to be mugged by the palm trees. The shuttle van rattled around the corner. It was a Ford E450, white with faded blue lettering. The brakes squealed as it came to a halt. The driver, a tired-looking man with a clipboard, hopped out. "Carver party," he shouted over the idling engine. "Going to Kahului Airport." "That is us," Gary said, his voice cracking. He stood up, hoisting the heavy bags. There were no bellhops here. He had to load them himself into the rear of the van. I watched him struggle with the weight, a week ago. I would have tipped a porter $50 to do that for him, today. I simply watched. It was important for him to feel the gravity of his own baggage. Bella climbed into the van without looking at me. She chose a seat in the back row, huddled against the window, pulling her knees to her chest. She looked small. The influencer who wanted to rule the internet was now just a girl in a shuttle bus, hoping nobody recognized her. My mother lingered on the curb. She looked at the open door of the van. Then she turned to look at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed and watery. For a moment, the silence between us stretched out, heavy with 32 years of unspoken grievances. Then, she moved toward me. She opened her arms. It was an instinctual gesture, a mother reaching for her child, expecting the biological imperative of comfort to override the logic of the situation. She wanted a hug. She wanted a moment of warmth to sustain her through the cold night ahead. I did not step forward. I stepped back. It was a small movement, perhaps only 6 inches, but it was a chasm. My mother stopped. Her arms fell to her sides. The rejection hit her physically. I saw her flinch as if I had slapped her. "Annalise," she whispered, "we are family. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means everything," I replied, my voice cool and steady against the humid air. "It means I paid your debts. It means I kept a roof over your head. It means I bought you a ticket home when you had nothing. That is what family means to me. Mother, it is a verb, not a noun, and I have done the verbs. I just wanted a hug," she cried softly. "I just wanted to say goodbye." "You should get in the van." "Mother," I said, gesturing to the idling vehicle where the driver was checking his watch impatiently. "You have a long journey ahead of you. 3 layovers, 28 hours, economy seats that do not recline. You should save your energy for the flight. You are going to need it." She looked at me one last time. She searched my face for a crack in the armor, a glimmer of the daughter who used to draw her pictures and beg for her attention. She found only the crisis director. She turned and climbed into the van. The heavy sliding door slammed shut with a metallic finality. The van pulled away, spewing a cloud of exhaust into the night. I watched its taillights disappear down the coastal highway, merging into the stream of traffic leaving paradise. I waited for the sadness to hit me. I waited for the pang of guilt, the hollow ache of loneliness that books and movies tell you is supposed to follow the estrangement of a parent. It did not come. Instead, I felt a physical sensation of lightness. It started in my chest and radiated out to my fingertips. It was the sensation of a patient waking up from surgery to find that a malignant tumor, one that had been leaching nutrients and blood for decades, had finally been excised. There was a scar. Yes, but the sickness was gone. I signaled to my private driver, who had been waiting discreetly in the shadows of the Escalade. "Back to the Sapphire Cove, Ms. Carver?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "And please, turn the music up. Something classical, something victorious." I spent my final night in Hawaii alone, and it was the most luxurious night of my life. I swam naked in the infinity pool of my presidential villa, floating on my back under the canopy of stars. The water was heated to exactly 82 degrees. There was no whining sister complaining about the humidity. There was no mother asking if I thought she looked old. There was no stepfather making awkward small talk about the weather to fill the silence. There was just me, the ocean, and the silence I had purchased. I climbed out of the pool and wrapped myself in a plush robe. I sat on the lanai with my laptop, not to work, but to close loops. My phone chimed with a message. It was from Marcus, the CEO of Aurelia Solutions. "Marcus, I reviewed the final report on the Carver Estate social media containment. Impressive work. Annalise, you dismantled a hostile narrative in under 4 hours without exposing the firm to liability. The board is impressed. We need that kind of ruthlessness at the executive level. The vice president of global crisis position is yours, effective immediately. Salary bump is 25%. Welcome to the inner circle." I stared at the screen. "Vice President, they say success is the best revenge." I disagreed. Success was simply the byproduct of focus. My family had been a distraction, a constant static noise that interfered with my signal. Now that the static was gone, the signal was crystal clear. I typed a reply. "Thank you. Marcus, I accept. I will see you in the office on Monday." I poured myself the last glass of the Krug champagne. I slept for 8 hours straight, a dreamless, deep sleep that rejuvenated every cell in my body. The next morning, I did not rush. My flight was on my schedule, not the airline's. I arrived at the private airfield at noon. The sun was high and bright, bleaching the tarmac white. The Gulfstream G650 was waiting, its engines already humming a low, powerful note. As I walked up the stairs to the jet, I imagined where my family was at this exact moment. It was noon in Hawaii, which meant it was 2 p.m. in Seattle. They would be in the middle of their first layover. They were likely sitting on hard plastic chairs in a crowded terminal, eating cold sandwiches, guarding their plastic bags. Bella would be trying to charge her phone at a communal outlet that was already taken. Mom would be complaining about her back. Gary would be staring into space, realizing that his truck was gone and he would have to take the bus to work on Monday. Somewhere in that terminal. Bella was likely trying to type a message to me. I knew her patterns. The shock would have worn off, replaced by a surge of impotent rage. She would want to have the last word. She would be typing a paragraph of insults, blaming me for her ruined engagement, her lost inheritance, her humiliation. Message, send failure. The notification would pop up on her screen in red text. User not found. She would try again. Message, send failure. She would realize then that the block was total. I had blocked her number. I had blocked her email. I had blocked her social media handles. I had even blocked the IP address of her phone from accessing my personal server. She was screaming into a void, and the void was not listening. I stepped onto the plane. The air was cool and smelled of leather and fresh orchids. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Carver," Elena said, handing me a hot towel. "Ready for departure." "More than ready," I said. I sat in my usual seat, the window seat on the right side, as the jet roared down the runway and lifted effortlessly into the sky. I looked down at the island of Maui one last time, from 10,000 feet. The resorts looked like Monopoly houses. The Paradise Palms was just a speck of beige concrete. The road where I had watched them walk was just a thin gray line. I opened my laptop. I navigated to my personal finance dashboard. There was one final task to complete. I located the folder labeled Family Support Fund. This was the folder where I had tracked every dollar I had given them over the last decade. The mortgage payments, the car loans, the tuition, the loans that were never repaid. It was a folder of obligation. a digital monument to my own guilt and their manipulation. I right-clicked on the folder. A menu appeared. I selected delete. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to permanently delete Family Support Fund and all associated subfolders? This action cannot be undone. My finger hovered over the trackpad. For years, I had believed that this folder was the anchor keeping me grounded. I thought that paying for them was the price of belonging. I thought that if I stopped paying, I would float away into the ether, unloved and alone. But I wasn't floating away. I was flying. I was soaring at 45,000 feet in a machine that cost $60 million, on my way to a job that paid me 7 figures, to a life that belonged entirely to me. I clicked yes. The folder vanished. The recycling bin icon emptied. The hard drive space was reclaimed. I closed the laptop. I leaned back in the soft leather seat and closed my eyes. The hum of the jet engines was a lullaby of power and progress. There was no sadness. There was no regret. There was only the pristine, terrifying, exhilarating silence of absolute freedom. Aloha, I whispered to the empty air. And for the first time, I meant it, not as a greeting, but as a goodbye. The Gulfstream G650 touched down at Denver International Airport at exactly 2 p.m. on Sunday. The sky was a flat, slate gray, and the ground was dusted with a layer of dirty, frozen snow. The temperature was 18 degrees Fahrenheit. It was a brutal, biting cold that felt less like weather and more like a judgment. I stepped off the plane wearing a cashmere coat that cost $4,000 and knee-high leather boots. My driver was waiting on the tarmac. The transition from the climate-controlled cabin to the heated leather seats of the SUV took less than 30 seconds. I did not shiver. My family, however, was currently somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, likely squeezed into the middle row of a Boeing 737, knees pressed against the plastic tray tables, breathing recycled air that smelled of despair. They would not arrive until the early hours of Monday morning. They had 12 hours of misery left. I had work to do. Take me to the Highland Park property, I told the driver. We drove through the city I had conquered. Denver is a place of boom and bust, of gold rushes and oil crashes. It is a city that understands that fortune is fleeting. My parents lived in a nice neighborhood, the kind with tree-lined streets and porches that were meant for lemonade but were mostly used for Amazon packages. It was a facade of stability built on a foundation of my money. When we pulled into the driveway, the house looked dark and uninviting. The blinds were drawn. A week's worth of mail was stuffed into the box. It looked like what it was a house that had been neglected by people who did not understand the value of maintenance. I got out of the car. I did not have a key. I did not need one. A white van was already parked at the curb. Henderson lock safe, Mr. Henderson, a man with grease-stained hands and a face that had seen everything. Stepped out. Ms. Carver, he asked. I got your work order. Full rekey. Full replacement, I corrected. Deadbolts and handle sets. Front door, back door, garage side door, and I want the smart locks removed. I want physical, high-security tumblers, the kind that cannot be picked and cannot be hacked. You got the deed? He asked. He was a professional. He did not break into houses without paperwork. I pulled the folder from my bag. I showed him the notarized document from Blue Horizon Holdings, granting me full possessory rights as the lien holder in possession. Looks legal to me, he shrugged. I will get the drill. For the next hour, I stood in the living room of my childhood home while the sound of drilling shrieked through the empty hallways. It was a violent sound. Metal tearing into wood. It felt appropriate. I walked through the house while he worked. I saw the piles of unopened bills on the kitchen counter. I saw the half-empty bottle of wine on the coffee table. I saw Bella's room, a disaster zone of clothes and makeup palettes, a shrine to a career that did not exist. I felt like an archaeologist walking through the ruins of a civilization that had collapsed due to its own greed. All done, ma'am. Mr. Henderson said, handing me a set of 3 heavy brass keys. These are uncopyable. You need a special card to get duplicates made. Perfect, I said. Thank you. I paid him $350 in cash. He left. I stood on the front porch. The wind was howling now, kicking up swirls of snow. I took a large manila envelope out of my bag. I placed 2 of the new keys inside. Then, I inserted the document I had drafted on the plane. It was a residential lease agreement, but it was unlike any lease a standard landlord would issue. Clause 1. Rent is set at $2,800 per month, representing the fair market value plus interest on the arrears. Payment is due on the first of the month. No grace period. Clause 2. Tenants agree to submit to monthly financial audits. Failure to provide bank statements will result in immediate termination of the lease. Clause 3. No subletting, no unauthorized guests staying longer than 48 hours. This was the Kyle clause, though Kyle was smart enough to run. So it was mostly to prevent Bella from moving in the next victim. Clause 4. Any disparagement of the landlord. Blue Horizon Holdings or its primary shareholder. Annalise Carver on any public forum will be considered a breach of contract and grounds for immediate eviction. I sealed the envelope. I pulled out a roll of heavy-duty duct tape. I taped the envelope to the center of the newly varnished front door. It looked stark and official. It looked like a foreclosure notice, because, in spirit, it was. I did not leave a welcome mat. I turned around, walked down the steps, and got back into my waiting car. "Take me home," I said. "To the penthouse." The timeline of suffering is precise. My family landed at Denver International Airport at 2:30 in the morning. They had been traveling for 28 hours. They had slept in the Houston airport on hard benches. They had eaten vending machine crackers. They were dehydrated, stiff, and smelling of that unique combination of sweat and airplane cabin pressure. It was 3 in the morning when the taxi dropped them off. The temperature had dropped to 12 degrees. They were wearing shorts and linen shirts. They had packed their winter coats in the checked luggage, but they were too exhausted to open the bags on the sidewalk to retrieve them. They just wanted to get inside. They just wanted heat. I was not there to see it, but I saw it through the lens of the new doorbell camera I had installed before I left. I watched the feed from the comfort of my living room, sipping a glass of water. The taxi taillights faded into the dark. Gary walked up the steps first. Shivering violently, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his old keychain. He tried to insert the key into the lock. It did not fit. He frowned. He tried again. He jiggled it. He pushed harder. "Gary, open the door," Mom cried from the bottom of the steps. She was hugging herself, her teeth chattering audibly. "It is freezing." "It won't go in," Gary stammered. "The key doesn't fit." "Let me try," Bella snapped. She pushed past him. She jammed her key into the lock. It hit the metal guard and slid off. "What is going on?" Bella screamed. "Did she break the lock?" Then, Gary saw the envelope. It was taped right at eye level, on the front. In my handwriting was a single word. Tenants. Gary ripped the envelope off the door. He tore it open with freezing fingers. The 2 brass keys fell out and clattered onto the frozen porch. He pulled out the document. He held it up to the porch light. "What is it?" Mom asked, climbing the stairs, her face gray with cold. "It is a lease," Gary whispered. A cloud of white vapor escaped his mouth with every word. "Blue Horizon Holdings. That is her company." "A lease," Bella yelled. "This is our house. She cannot make us sign a lease." "She owns it, Bella," Gary shouted back, his patience finally snapping under the weight of the frostbite nipping at his fingers. "She owns the debt. We signed the agreement at the restaurant. We are tenants. Open the door," Mom begged. "Just open the door. Gary, we can read it inside." Gary fumbled on the ground for the keys. He found one. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped it twice before managing to slide it into the new lock. Click, the bolt retracted. They stumbled inside, tripping over each other in a desperate stampede for warmth. But the house was not warm. I had accessed the smart thermostat remotely 3 hours ago. I had set the temperature to 55 degrees, just warm enough to keep the pipes from bursting, but cold enough to require a sweater. Why is it so cold? Bella shrieked, kicking the door shut. She turned off the heat. She is trying to kill us. Read the note, Gary said. He was holding a smaller index card that had been tucked inside the lease. He read it aloud, his voice trembling. Welcome home. The thermostat is locked at 55 degrees to conserve energy costs. As you are currently responsible for all utilities and have a history of non-payment, once you transfer the utility accounts into your own names and pay the deposit, you may adjust the temperature. Welcome to the real world. Bella let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She grabbed the lease agreement from Gary's hand and threw it on the floor. I am not living like this, she screamed. I am going to sue her. I am going to call the police. She ran to the window. She pounded on the glass, looking out into the dark, empty street. You hear me, Annalise? She screamed at the darkness. I know you are watching. You are a witch, a hateful, bitter witch. Across the street, a porch light flickered on. Mrs. Higgins, the 70-year-old neighbor who walked her poodle at 6 a.m, peered out from behind her curtains. She saw the Carver family, disheveled, screaming, standing in their living room in the middle of the night. She watched for a moment, then shook her head and closed the curtains. It was a look of pure judgment. The Carvers were the noisy family, the messy family, and now, clearly, the crazy family. Mom collapsed onto the sofa. She didn't even take off her coat. She just curled into a ball and started to cry. It was a low, defeated weeping. We have to pay rent first, Gary said, staring at the paper on the floor. That is in 4 days, $2,800. We don't have it, Mom sobbed. Then I guess I am selling the truck tomorrow, Gary said. And Bella, you are selling your purses. No, Bella screamed. Yes, Gary said. He sat down on the recliner, still wearing his Hawaiian shirt under his parka. Or you can go sleep outside. Those are the options. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of reality crashing through the roof. There were no more bailouts. There were no more saviors. There was just the cold, hard math of survival. 5 miles away, in the heart of downtown Denver, the scene was very different. I was sitting on the white leather sofa of my penthouse on the 42nd floor. The entire south wall was glass, offering a panoramic view of the city lights blinking against the black void of the prairie. The heating was set to a perfect 72 degrees. A fire was crackling in the gas fireplace, casting dancing shadows on the walls. My phone, which was resting on the marble coffee table, buzzed once. It was a notification from my bank. Transaction, successful transfer of title and deed. Blue Horizon Holdings is now the sole recorded owner of the property at 424 Elm Street. Legal fees settled. I picked up the phone. I looked at the notification. It was done. The house was mine. The debt was secured. My family was contained. I swiped the notification away. I poured myself a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon. It was a dark, rich red, the color of blood that had finally oxygenated. I stood up and walked to the balcony door. I slid it open. The cold air rushed in, mixing with the warmth of the apartment. I stepped out onto the terrace. The wind whipped at my silk robe, but I did not feel the cold. I felt the altitude. I looked down at the grid of the city. Somewhere in that sprawl of lights, in a cold house set to 55 degrees, 3 people were realizing that their free ride had come to a terminal stop. They were learning that actions have consequences, that money is finite, and that the person they called the bank had finally closed the vault. I had lost a mother, a stepfather, and a sister. I thought about the word loss, usually. It implies a deficit, a missing piece. But as I stood there, inhaling the crisp, thin air of the mile-high city, I realized that I hadn't lost anything. I had shed weight. I had lost the anxiety of checking my bank account to see what they had drained. I had lost the dread of the late-night phone calls asking for just a little help. I had lost the feeling of being a utility and appliance that was only loved when it was working. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted like iron and blackberries. I turned back to the warmth of my living room. I tossed my phone onto the sofa. It bounced once and settled into the cushions. I didn't care if it rang. I didn't care if they texted. They were tenants now. They could email management during business hours. I was no longer Annalisa the daughter. I was Annalise, the architect of my own life. And the foundation was finally solid. They were right, I said to the empty city, my voice carried away by the wind. The ticket to paradise was expensive, but the price to buy my freedom from my own blood that cost everything, and I paid it in full. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but freedom tastes even better. I would love to know where you are listening from. Are you tuning in from the snowy streets of Denver, the sunny beaches of Hawaii, or somewhere entirely different? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and if you enjoyed seeing justice served, please subscribe to the Blue Payback channel, smash that like button, and hit the hype button to help this story reach more people who need a little vindication in their lives. Stay strong, and never let anyone treat you like an ATM.